But the dinosaurs had better look really, really good. And in fact, everything in the world had better look really, really good. The game is entirely physically based. It's basically a simulation of the island. You see something you need to get into, you can bust the door down. You can put a plank over the wall. You can do what you think you would do. Nothing is really limited. And that means that you're not solving the puzzles that the designers set up. You're solving the puzzles that you see.
Well, part of the challenge we set before ourselves is to bring the look of the game to a new standard. And our thoughts on that was, if we pull from the same talent that other game companies are, we are likely to get the same kind of look. After discussing it, the decision was to just pull from wherever we thought good artistic talent may lie.
We take into account not only the texture and what's on an object when we draw it, but we take into account, but we actually draw the surface itself, the roughness on the surface. They're physically modeled. And that means that instead of being animated and coming after you with some kind of animation cycles or run cycles, they're actually using their muscles and their bones to get at you. So if there's a tree in the way, they can knock the tree down and they can stumble over it. And if you run into a little house, they're going to beat their head into the house and they're going to try to rip the door off of the thing. For instance, on a dinosaur skin, you can see the folds in the skin. And what it enables us to do is not only make things look much more realistic, but it enables us to move the light across them in a way that you don't see the polygon boundaries. You don't see the jagged edges anywhere. You look at things that are lit this way, not so much as computer polygon models, but more as realistic entities inside. And it's really pretty impressive. You're trying to create a place that's going to be believable enough that when you see a dinosaur, it's going to scare you. It's not always perfect. They screw up, they're going to run into trees, they're going to trip, they're going to fall down, but they are also going to do whatever it takes to come after you. I mean, you're going to be climbing up a hill and this thing's going to be scraping, pulling ferns over to get you. And you better have a plan. You're just in an environment and you're trying to solve a problem and get off of it and stay away from the dinosaurs.
Welcome to Site B, an InGen research facility. For centuries, mankind has wondered about the dinosaurs, the largest land animals ever to have lived. Now, thanks to breakthrough technology...
Trespasser is not a good game.
Anne's main way of interacting with her environment is the right arm. You have pretty much full control over Anne's right arm.
Holding shift or control lets you move the arm on X and Y axes. Why this is in the game is anyone's guess.
This game was a critical flop at its release, selling only around 50,000 copies. What was left at release was a buggy first-person shooter that could barely be run on computers of the time.
Crashing, AI issues, graphical problems, and even causing puzzles to be unsolvable.
And it barely resembled what was being marketed prior to that.
Very impressive.
Instead of a health meter, what we have is this little heart tattoo on Anne's boob. This will fill up with red as you take damage, and because this game is one of the first to use regenerating health, it will drain of red as you avoid other hits. This is one of the first games to feature classical Newtonian physics. However, the game completely lacks friction, which is why even standing still on one of these things you'll start to slide off. The project was extremely ambitious, but numerous time and budgetary constraints forced the developers to cut out many of the more interesting features of Trespasser,
which had the dinosaurs with feelings, such as anger, hunger, fear, and even happiness, which would affect if a dinosaur wanted to attack you or not.
To avoid the violent mood swings, they cranked all the emotions up to just anger and hunger being maxed out with everything else being 0. For some reason, they forgot this one poor guy, so he is passive. And we'll just walk around doing nothing.
He's a nice raptor. Oh.
Here it is, folks. Trespasser's dark and terrible secret. third-person mode. You can see exactly what this is. It's all the parts of Anne that you can usually see. There's her arm over there, there's her chest and her heart tattoo, and nothing else.
This is the stun rod. If it touches anything, it will shock it. Like that. Pretty much impossible to aim. The reason for that is because it's mounted onto this bipod and you can't remove it. So you just kind of have to rotate it around and oh jeez.
Well, if you get attacked while you're hanging on to this thing, you are dead in no time.
Five, 2, 6. So we're gonna have to go back out the window. Oh jeez. Don't want to lose this thing. 3, 2. Come back here. Trying to slide away. And 7. Out of that. Now this chair is not a chair at all. It is just pieces of a chair, loosely stuck together.
The thing about the dinosaurs that makes them so realistic is that they're physically modeled. And that means that instead of being animated and coming after you with some kind of animation cycles or run cycles, they're actually using their muscles and their bones to get at you. So if there's a tree in the way, they can knock the tree down and they can stumble over it. And if you run into a little house, they're going to beat their head into the house and they're going to try to rip the door off of the thing. You look at things that are lit this way, not so much as computer polygon models, but more as realistic entities.
Something Trespasser did very well was its sound design. If you listen carefully to repetitive sounds like gunshots and footsteps, you'll notice they sound a little bit different each time. Trespasser was one of the first games to use sound randomizer software to keep things interesting.
Now this is technology that will take any two materials in the game and combine them in a specific way. Metal against wood, metal against flesh. But essentially, I'm assuming this was made by someone over at trustcom.org, the last kind of remaining Trespasser fan site that is still running. There was a very strong modding community for this game for a while, creating custom levels and whatnot. 2013 was when the last of these maps was uploaded. I think it's an important part of gaming history, even though it was a terrible, critical failure, and it's not a great game. You can see that developers were trying to do something different. If they made a modern-day Trespasser,
It's basically a simulation of the island. A simulation of everything on the island. The player, the dinosaurs, all the objects, the plants, the ground, all the buildings and structures. And what that basically means is that you can apply your everyday intuition to everything in the game. You see something you need to get into, you can bust the door down. You can put a plank over the wall. You can do what you think you would do. Nothing is really limited.
A lost world is a sort of scientific myth, an evolutionary scenario in which an ecosystem is isolated and preserved. The rest of the world changes, leaving a tiny, fragile pocket where ancient species survive. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed." And on the pedestal these words appear: "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away."